Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. As I know, some of us are in different time zones. My name is Chamoy Singh. I am a program management assistant for the assessment and management of environmental pollution and the specially protected areas and wildlife programs at the UNEP Cartagena Convention Secretariat here in Kingston, Jamaica. And I'll be your moderator today. On behalf of the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, I am delighted to welcome you to our webinar entitled Showcasing Best Practices in Waste Management. The main goal is to showcase the work being done by different stakeholders in the Caribbean and their initiatives, in the wider Caribbean, as we have Colombia included as well, and their initiatives to reduce pollution from waste and plastics, as well as to do a soft launch of the Compendium on Waste Management in the Caribbean publication, which was done jointly by the UNEP Cartagena Convention Secretariat and the Caribbean Tourism Organization. We will have opening remarks on behalf of the Secretariat and the Caribbean Tourism Organization. However, before we begin, I would like to share a short video on single-use plastic recently produced by UNEP based on the findings of a high-level summary report on the environmental impact of single-use plastics products and their alternatives. And a link to the video will be provided in the chat. So I'm just going to share this video. Hold on one second. Hold on. 1 second. Right. Technical issues. My apologies. Give me 1 second. Let me try and get this to right. Right.
I think that Tamoy, there's also an option, something when you share that you also include sound. I know Sean might be able to know this exactly why. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. You're not able to hear it?
No.
No, I think there's an option there. Maybe Sean can advise that when you share it, there's something to share the sound as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so he might be able to tell you exactly what you need to turn off and on.
Okay, fine. Well, we're going to share the links in the chat so you'll be able to view the video and share it among your networks. All right, so now we are going to I'm going to invite Mr. Christopher Corbin, Program Officer for the Assessment and Management of Environmental Pollution Program at the Secretariat, to give opening remarks on behalf of the Secretariat. Thanks, Chris. Can you go ahead?
Thank you so much, Tamoy, and again, just welcome to all participants. It's first of all, for those who may have tried to join the session a couple of weeks ago, we do apologize for the slight technical challenges that we had. We understand a number of persons weren't able to register and then weren't able to connect. But in a way, it has worked out well in that we've been able now to have the full complement of panelists on board, as well as our partner in this activity. But I would like to, first of all, start off maybe a little unusually by making a couple of statements that were taken from publications from as early as 2017. So this was a publication by the BBC, 6 May 2017. Giant mass of plastic waste taking over the Caribbean. 15th July 2018, publication by the Jamaica Gleaner newspaper. Poor management of Jamaica's solid waste disposal sites, a growing public health issue. 10th June 2019, a World Bank blog. Caribbean beaches are littered with single-use plastics. Probably well known by many, a Forbes article, 20th September 2019. Caribbean islands are the biggest plastic polluters per capita in the world. 4th February 2020, Earth Journalism News, an environment under threat. Belize's Ambergris Key lacks adequate solid waste management. And as recently as the 6th of August 2021, by Duchewell, Dominican Republic, plastic waste chokes a surfer's paradise. Our own State of Convention area report on marine pollution that was developed around a year ago highlighted that the Caribbean Sea had one of the highest floating plastic concentrations in the world, and modeling studies suggest a significant movement of transboundary plastic from outside the region and into the region. Needless to say, there is a great level of interest, a great level of priority, a great level of concern throughout the region on how best we address solid waste management, on how best we address plastics management, and how best we look at the issue of marine litter. Caribbean countries, one could argue, were at the forefront of instituting single-use plastic bans in an effort to respond to what some people have described as this wicked problem. However, what we have seen as the Cartagena Convention Secretariat is that we perhaps are sometimes good in this region at showcasing what is going wrong and where the challenges are and where the problems and why the region is so polluted, without often showcasing and recognizing the number of positive steps being taken by national governments, by non-governmental organizations, by research and academic institutes. And therefore, we were really pleased when the Caribbean Tourism Organization reached out to us, really in response to a lot of the negative publicity on the issue of plastics and waste management in the region, and using it perhaps as an opportunity to reach out to stakeholders to identify what are some of the best practices taking place. Where are some of the opportunities for replication and upscaling? And as the UNEP Cartagena Convention Secretariat, we were really pleased to be able to partner with the CTO in reaching out to a number of stakeholders through the region. It was really important for us to partner with what is one of the leading economic sectors for the region, tourism, and to identify how stakeholders within the private sector were addressing the issue of waste management. It has resulted in the development of a compendium of best practices, experiences, which we are soft launching today. That would be the image that you would have seen earlier on the screen. We're still doing some final graphical editing and touch-ups, but what we have done is we've invited some of the contributors to that publication to share some of their experiences with us. This is just the beginning of what we hope to be a continued and sustained effort to raise awareness about the issue of plastics management, waste management, but less so on the problem and more so on the solutions. How can we partner more effectively? How can we make the general public more aware? And most importantly, how can we take more specific action on the issue? So on behalf of the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, I'd really like, first of all, to welcome all the presenters, and particularly to welcome all of you who have taken the time to join us to share as to perhaps some more positive outlook on how we as a region are addressing this wicked problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Now I'd like to introduce Ms. Amanda Charles, who is a Sustainable Tourism Specialist at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, to provide opening remarks on behalf of the CTO. Amanda?
Good afternoon, all. Mr. Christopher Corbin, Ms. Tamoy Singh Clark of the United Nations Environment Program, Cartagena Convention Secretariat, distinguished panelists, authors, and contributors to the UNEP and CTO Compendium on Waste Management, and all webinar attendees, good afternoon. I bring greetings on behalf of the Secretary General of the Caribbean Tourism Organization. We are very pleased to have arrived at this juncture to officially launch the Compendium on Waste Management in the wider Caribbean region, which was designed as a valuable resource to add to the knowledge pool on effective waste management strategies, and also, as Chris would have mentioned, document regional initiatives, case studies, and success stories as it relates to the amazing work that is ongoing in the region to manage and mitigate this issue of waste. We are also pleased to participate in this webinar convened by our partner UNEP to support capacity building, sensitization, and awareness, highlighting waste management best practices in the areas of water resource management, policy responses to single-use plastics, waste management at the level of the accommodations subsector, and fisheries management. The CTO is extremely grateful to our partner, the United Nations Environment Program, Cartagena Convention Secretariat, for the support and expertise rendered through this partnership in seeking to address regional mandates and instill environmentally conscious and responsible practices across all sectors. We look forward to future collaboration opportunities, including the development of a strategy which is currently in trend. Waste management continues to be a challenge for all countries across the region, which has been spurred by the increasing demand for consumables. Additionally, plastic bottles, fishing gear, and packaging takes hundreds of years to break down. So reducing the use of disposable plastic is critical to ensure that Caribbean seas remain visually attractive, safe for recreational swimming, diving, and snorkeling, which support tourism and local lifestyles, and continues to be a healthy habitat for marine life, which in turn is a vital source of food. Microplastics, hazardous chemicals used in agriculture and manufacturing, and poor liquid and solid waste disposal practices damage sensitive ecosystems and are a threat to human life, health, and well-being. Effective waste management policies and strategies which are strictly implemented with continuous monitoring and evaluation and improved as needed continues to be the best way to decrease the negative effects on the environment. It is commendable, therefore, and we are heartened by the efforts of several regional governments in instituting bans on single-use plastics and styrofoam products, as well as other measures aimed at mitigating and managing waste. It is also notable that in some countries, the private sector, and in particular tourism businesses, are leading this charge. We recognize, however, that there is a lot more to be done, and CTO commits to continuing the partnership with UNEP to deliver education and training opportunities such as this to drive the transformational change needed to the regional tourism sector, ancillary sectors, and indeed residents and visitors alike. We all depend on a safe, clean, and healthy environment, and this has become even more critical given the COVID-19 new normal. Thanks again to the panelists who will share their knowledge and expertise with us this afternoon, and I look forward to productive deliberations. Thank you, and Tamoy, over to you. You're muted, Tamoy, in case
I think you're still muted.
Yeah, she's muted.
Hi, can everyone hear me now? That's strange. All right, sorry about that.
Yes, hearing you.
Okay, sorry about that. So thank you, Amanda. Thank you for sharing those kind words, and we appreciate the partnership. And as mentioned before, we are happy to be here today to present contributors to the compendium who will present their best practices, lessons learned, and recommendations from their projects. And I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. We have Dr. Andrea Clayton from the Caribbean Maritime University in Jamaica. We have Mr. Jareth Vermilin from Bukutian Tower Beach Resort in Aruba. We also have Mr. Alejandro Medina from the Universidad de los Andes School of Management in Colombia. And we have a bonus presentation from Mr. Robert Glazer from the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute in the United States. We will have a question and answer segment following each presentation, and please feel free to send questions in the chat during the presentations and we will address them in the Q&A, or you may raise your hand during the question and answer segment and you'll be allowed to ask your question at that time. I will now introduce our first speaker. Her name is Dr. Andrea Clayton, Principal Lecturer of Sustainable Development at the Caribbean Maritime University in Jamaica. She's also the Caribbean representative for the Governing Plastics Network and the Director of the Earth Ambassadors Program. Her research and publications focus on systems thinking and applications, the blue economy, marine litter, and the problem of plastic pollution. Her current research projects include abandoned ghost gear in the Caribbean and behavior towards single-use plastic use in primary and prep schools. Her ghost gear initiatives involve education and training activities in fishing communities and examining ways to collaborate with the local solid waste management agency in the collection and treatment of discarded fishing nets. Her work on behavioral change involves educating the school population about single-use plastic and its impact, as well as helping individuals and institutions to identify possible alternatives to plastic use. Dr. Clayton holds a doctorate from Temple University, degrees in economics and economic development, and is a trained facilitator. She's also an Association of Commonwealth Universities alumna, a wife and a mother, and a very keen gardener. And Dr. Clayton will present on policy responses to single-use plastic pollution in the Caribbean. Dr. Clayton, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Greetings, everyone. I will proceed quite quickly because I've actually left a class to come to the presentation. So you have my slides. Thank you very much. If I look like I'm looking, my computer screen and my camera is two different places, so please forgive me. So you may change the slide. Please go ahead and change the slide.
Yeah, I'm changing it. So 1 second, please. I'm not sure why it's not moving.
Okay, while you're doing that, we when we in the Caribbean, we Mr. Corbin proceeded with discussing some of the challenges that are already established for plastic in the Caribbean region. And in particularly, we have a problem with single-use plastic because they are made, to be used once and to be tossed. And countries like ours, particularly small island states and developing countries, we do not necessarily have the facilities in place. We have limited capacity to process this waste that is generated. And when we're talking about single-use plastic, we're really talking about, packaging. We're talking about, especially now in the era of COVID, we're talking about medical items such as gloves and syringes, grocery bags, food and other containers, bottles, straws. Now, many Caribbean countries have, as Mr. Corbin indicated earlier, they've taken initial steps to address these. And this is primarily a problem for us because we're open economies, as except for Cuba, we're open economies and we import a lot. But these single-use plastic items come and they present other challenges for us. It's not just a waste item, but if in effect they go and they block the drains and sewers, they cause flooding, and especially for our tourism industry, it litters our coastline because as our rivers and our waterways all exit into our oceans, then some of this litter gets washed up on our coastlines and some goes further out in the sea. Mr. Corbin made some of my points as that I was going to mention as well about the we have 10. We've been flagged as having 10 of the world's top 30 polluters in the region. And mark you, this is not just because we use all this plastic, but as was also mentioned, it has to do with where we sit in the ocean conveyor belt. So some of that waste has traveled to our region. Okay. Now with tourism contributing, almost 20% directly to our income, and indirectly, almost 30%, then we have to pay particular attention to the problem of plastic. Now, when we have our coastal cleanups annually, in 2019 it was, because we didn't have one in 2020 because of COVID. So in 2019, when the debris was collected and the Caribbean region was assessed, we found that Caribbean countries collectively collected over 4.2 million foam fragments, plastic and microplastics. And mark you, this is not, there's still some left on the coastline. And that represents 2,014 items per kilometer, which is 3.5 times the global average. The global average is 573 items per kilometers. So given our position in the circulation of the Great Ocean Conveyor current, and given the amount of plastic that we use, we really have to be very careful to address this problem urgently. And I'm happy that the UN and the regional UN initiative, the regional UN initiatives to address this problem. Next slide, please. Now, while you're doing that, now there are numerous concerns that we have associated with this, particularly its impact on the environment, but also the impact on our health. Now, some of our plastic ends up in the landfills, but some also end up in illegal dump sites. And we know that from numerous UN reports that over 8 million metric tons of this plastic ends up in our ocean. Now, the Caribbean consumes a high fish and marine life diet. And while we don't have as much studies yet done on the impact it's having on our local population, the health of our local population, what we do know is that microplastic, which is that those plastic that's 5 millimeters or less, they do end up in the local food chain, in the human food chain. And this is both primary microplastics and secondary microplastics. Now, the primary ones are those that are definitely manufactured in the products, in the toothpaste, in the microbeads that go in our cosmetic products. But there's also the secondary microplastics. That's when the plastic breaks down, and the fish and the animals. In Jamaica, for example, even when before it ends up in the ocean, you do see other animals in the rummaging through the garbage on the streets, and they're also consuming. So the goats and the cows that might be straying, they will be consuming these, and so it's entering the human food chain. And the implications, we're already seeing that some chemicals, including BPA and phthalates, can cross the placenta in pregnancy. And this has implications for growth retardation and neurological harm to our babies. And so most of our poor communities in the Caribbean lack the proper sanitation or waste collection systems. There is also, there's also the need for adjustments to attitude when it comes to waste, because it's important to understand our local culture. Now, when we talk about the Caribbean, we're talking about, can you go to the next slide, please? For those of us who are in the meeting who are not very familiar with, when we're talking about the Caribbean, what we're talking about, this is the group of nations. And we're particular, as you can see, we're primarily small island states. The ones in blue are primarily English speaking. And of course, Ghana, which is in South America, but it's still referred to as the Caribbean. Now, as you can see there, most of our territory, we're small islands, so most of our territory is really coastal. For a country like Jamaica, our marine territory is much larger than our physical land space. It's actually 21 times larger than the island itself, and that is reflected in almost all our Caribbean islands. And so what we know is that the waste we generate on land goes into the ocean. So we have to address the waste that comes from land, especially because our Caribbean beaches is one of the top destinations for tourism. And I'm happy to see someone presenting from the tourism industry, because plastic has such major impact for that industry. Next slide, please. So what have been the current policy regional responses? You can, yeah, go ahead. So we have legislation. Now, of the Caribbean countries, almost all countries either have a ban in place or they have policies leading to that are in the pipeline that will ultimately lead to bans. Now, some have begun with partial bans on the importation, on sale, on the distribution of single-use plastic, and they have progressed to complete bans. And that, for example, in Jamaica, that includes the production and importation of the products. Now, the focus for regional governments has been on individual localized legislation. But as has been established, the region itself also suffers from plastic that's coming out from outside of the region. And so at this point, we need to establish some collective arrangement for us as a region to be able to adequately deal with plastic that's not generated in our local territorial waters. We can't send it back, but we have to find a way to either retrieve it and process, but we have to remove it because it has implications for our longer term development. Next slide, please. Other strategies have included education. Antigua and Barbuda, for example, they began their processing from 2015, and they allowed for a longer lead time. And during that time, they engaged in strong education campaigns that were designed to build awareness and to sensitize the population about the impact plastic is having on the environment and the difference that they can make. And what we've found as we've evaluated the problem of plastic across the region is that when there is a strong focus on education and when there is an adequate amount of lead time, the results are more successful than when there's a shorter time or less time is spent on education and campaigns. Now, there's also the need to provide alternatives. Now, communication and consultation is in the process of the provision of alternatives. And that's because communication and consultation is viewed separately from education. This is where now we're engaging major stakeholders, and we're devising ways to incentivize the process of change that we're trying to drive in the broader population. Again, countries like Antigua and Barbuda, they were very successful in getting that done. Countries like Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they used a systematic engagement framework where stakeholders were integral in the process from the get-go. And while the process is still going on, they continue to be a part of the conversation. In some jurisdictions, you find that there has been a need to introduce fines because primarily in those jurisdictions where the lead time was very short or adequate investment in education and communication outreach was not included in the process. And so what we've also found is that when it comes to communication, the communication does not stop when the bans get introduced, but it has to be timed and framed according to the message that the objective that you're trying to achieve at a specific time. So, for example, if you're introducing a ban to address plastic bags, then the communication needs to line up with that ban, and the alternatives for that should also be in place. We found that countries that did not have that alignment and did not put the necessary steps in place for the alternatives, for the provision of the alternatives. But for example, like Guyana or even Jamaica, where we waited for the industry, for the private sector to provide a solution to for alternatives. So alternatives was not incorporated in the strategy, but there was a reliance on the private sector to come up with that alternative. What you find is that we actually end up with problems later on that the governments then have to try and address. And in the case of Ghana, they had to withdraw the ban in the first instance and then re-examine the whole thing before they reintroduced it. And in other countries, for example, in Belize, I know that they're also looking at fines and enforcement as progressively. In Jamaica, we have fines that are fixed. And so, this is now becoming a more regular part of the initiatives that are being introduced. Next slide, please. Now, what we found are as we've been evaluating the responses regionally, is that some processes have lacked that comprehensive consultation, in that only primary stakeholders were engaged, and some of them were only engaged after the fact. So any strategy that we're going to look at for a comprehensive, holistic Caribbean approach needs to actually also consider including the persons that we would consider the persons on the ground, and have bottom up alongside a top down approach. We also found, as I indicated before, that where there was an adequate lead time, that created more challenges, and so we need to consider lead time for any policy adjustments to actually take effect. The communication strategy must include the relevant stakeholders, but that is important to eliminate duplication of efforts, because what we also found was that different groups were all basically doing the same thing, because there was no adequate horizontal communication. And the lack of a regional response towards general marine debris is also creating local challenges for individual countries. One of the major challenges across the region is that we have not established baseline data. So for all the policies that have been introduced in legislation, there is a lack of baseline data to properly evaluate how successful these initiatives are. And so as we're looking to move to the next dimension, then it is important that we establish that, so we can actually know the areas that we're being successful in. Next slide, please. And the consequences of this, we've had both positive and negative consequences. One of the positive, as in the case of Jamaica and those other regions where we didn't have adequate preparation for alternatives, what you found is that there's been another industry has emerged in the provision of these alternatives. We've also identified across those regions where the policies and bans are in place that there are less plastic bags and straws observed in the gullies and the water channels. However, because we have no baseline data, we're not really sure to what extent. We can't really speak to what extent this has happened. What we can tell you, as you can see in the image on the screen, is that the negative impact, for example, is that the plastic bags and the straws have been replaced by plastic bottles. So plastic bottles are now the dominant feature in most of the gullies and the beach cleanup activities. Now, additionally to plastic bottles being a major, so that basically there's what we found is that persons have just substituted one plastic item for another, is that there's also a creation of the black market for the banned items. So across the region, you'll still be able to find banned items. A top-down legislative approach has resulted in banned items being provided on the black market. You'll also find that there's a lack of small and medium enterprise and consumer buying, because especially where there isn't adequate education taking place and constant communication, there's persons that are still seeing plastic pollution at the consumer level as somebody else's problem. Especially because we do not have, for example, extended producer responsibilities implemented in some of these policy documents that are being drafted. You're also finding that persons are hoarding the banned items. So there's a deadline for the banned items, and people just hoard and then use them after the time period has passed. And additionally, where there is a low trust, then of course paranoia. Some people just don't trust what when the completely top-down approach, they don't trust what is being communicated to them. So, I'm still going to hide and do what I was used to doing in the first place, because this problem of waste management is also cultural. when waste has been considered somebody else's problem to deal with, then we have to look at changing people's behavior and attitudes towards plastic. Next slide, please. So what we recommend at this point, keep going, is, you know, varying communication programs. Those are all part of what I previously spoke about, so you can keep going. We have to look at communication strategies that are not just specific to targeting one. Yes, I think that's where we can stop now. We're not just targeting one type of or one level of the population, but we have to use differentiated approaches, mass media to reach large populations, and social marketing for specific target groups. We have to also, you know, look for media advocacy to gain support. We also have to involve those NGO groups that are on the ground that are able to relate more on a one-on-one basis with communities. There are also community groups that are already part of these initiatives, and what we found is that when there's partnership with community groups that are already aware, then it's easier to expand the work that can be done on the ground. And so communication, we've recognized, is a key part of what needs to happen. This slide here provides what we've identified as that combination that works, because it's important that a value system for environmental stewardship be developed locally and regionally. And that has to be the guiding principle in curtailing the problem of plastic management. Because we have to manage the nexus between culture and waste management. And as it pertains to governance, the focus should also include extended producer responsibility and the circular economy discourse. Now, in small countries like ours, we have to be careful that the circular economy conversation that we're having is specific to our region and is not necessarily one that is just imported. It has to include a hybrid approach, especially as it relates to that 500 milliliter bottle of that most jurisdictions use for water and juices. As it pertains to our communication, as I mentioned earlier, we have to have targeted approach, but one of those approaches that we would strongly recommend includes working with the children at the primary and at least at the primary and early childhood level, because these are the children who will then start impacting. We've already seen results of that, where children are already impacting what happens at home. And in my introduction, she mentioned about the work that I'm doing with the Earth Ambassadors. Yes, because we have a program called the Junior Ambassadors Program, which is specific for primary schools, and parents are already telling us, you know, their kids are coming, oh no, you can't do that. So we know that if we address the problem at the primary school level, we start the education process there is impact to be made for the long term. So value system, governance, coupled with legislation and adequate lead time, we believe, and communication will work towards helping creating a long-term sustainable solution for the problem that we're having now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your presentation. I know that you are pressed for time. If there are any questions, Janelle, are there any questions for Andrew? I'll open up to the floor right now, so you may ask.
None seen in the chat.
Okay. No questions. Very interesting presentation. Definitely with regards to the whole issue, the whole strategies which make the policies effective, and specifically effective communication, and of course providing that lead time so persons can be prepared for the changes that are to come. And of course the provision of alternatives, very important, can relate to the whole issue of culture especially within the Caribbean as it relates to waste management, something that is passed down through generations. So it's very interesting to see that there has to be a value system for environmental stewardship, because that's right. We have to kind of change our behavior in order for these policies to be effective, for them to work for the future. I thank you very much for your time. If there are any questions that may come up at the end, I'll definitely send them to you so you can provide a response to the persons who
Yes.
ask the questions. And I look forward to future working with you on learning more and additional updates on the policies that we have in the Caribbean on single-use plastic. All right, thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. And I'll have to go back to my class now. So I'll trust I'll get the recording
Sure, you.
to listen to. Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks. So, next presenter that we have is Mr. Jareth Vermilin. He is a sustainability and certification specialist at Bukutian Tower Beach Resort in Aruba. And he's also has hands-on experience with running an NGO called Kunaku 297, which focused on education in agriculture and conservation. Jareth received his Bachelor of Engineering in Industrial Engineering, specializing in smart engineering, energy management, and design at TIS Delft, and he's also a retired Dutch Marine. Jareth is passionate about sports, health, and the conservation of nature, and he will present on waste management at Bukuti and Tower Beach Resort in Aruba. Jareth, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. And as we say in Aruba, bon dia, bon tardi. I will be presenting our waste management best practices. Also, some of the examples, concrete examples of how we can better reduce, reuse, and recycle. I will be talking about the waste management policies at Bukutian Tower Beach Resort. We are the most sustainable hotel in the Caribbean. We are net zero and certified carbon neutral. Next slide, please. Yes. We are adults only beach resort, and since our inception in 1987, we have been the greenest hotel, and also we have banned all single-use plastics since the 1980s. In retrospect, you can see that in Aruba in 2019, they started the ban on single-use plastics and styrofoam. We've been doing that since our beginning in 1987. Next slide. Before. We are certified. We have 4 eco certifications. We have more certifications, but these are the certifications we manage our property, such as carbon neutral. As I said, we are the first and carbon neutral and net zero hotel in the Caribbean. We are LEED Gold, Green Globe, Platinum, and Travel Life Gold. These are all certifications where we have made our model, our framework for being completely sustainable, and also having our waste management practices, thanks to these certifications, are leading from these certifications. Next slide. When guests check in at Bukutian Tower, the first thing they see is that we have no front desk. We are almost 100% paperless, at the moment 90% paperless. From curb to room, they take about 10 to 15 minutes. And in the room, everything is done on the iPad. As you can see here, every room has a complimentary iPad where you can book your itinerary, where you can book activities, where you can also book the beach chairs. So everything is done via iPad as at the front desk, or as I say, the concierge office. When you reach here, we check all your information, credit card information. We let you sign also via iPad, making it so that we don't have any paper at the front desk office. After which you will arrive in the room. Right now I'm in one of the rooms. And in these rooms, you will see that we have dispensers for all toiletries. This is also, again, eliminating the use for small little toiletries or different objects you would need for a stay here. To do that, we buy in bulk. You could think that you can imagine these, as you can see on the PowerPoint presentation, our water canteens we buy in bulk. That eliminates or reduces the amount of transportation emissions that will be emitting, by way of making sure the whole container is filled first with these bottles, and then we ship them out to Aruba, as Aruba is an island country, so we have to ship everything in. These water canteens, which is one little difference you can make in your hotel resort, to eliminate single-use plastics. By way of these canteens, we have eliminated 300 or almost 390,000 single-use plastic bottles annually. And on our resort, we have 6 stations where our guests can fill these bottles up. And when guests arrive, one thing that really does pain me is if we do not educate them about this, they will buy, because most travelers, when they go to different countries, they're not sure if the water is drinkable. On Aruba, our water is completely drinkable. We even won an award in 2008 for the best water quality. So I have to inform, educate these guests before they arrive that you don't have to buy plastic bottles. You don't have to buy any water bottles on resort or in your vacation here, because we have these beautiful canteens with the logo on them. They are not only for water, but you can also use them for your coffee because they're hot and cold. Like I said, 20 years ago, we already banned the use of single plastics, or even more so. Our whole sustainable, our environmental policies are all encompassing, and we go from out the reduce, reuse, and recycle ideals. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit more about, because this is the reduce section, and then the next slide I'll talk about our reuse section, as we recycle and reuse the most as we can. A good example of this is we used to have a beautiful restaurant. We called it the Pirates Den restaurant. It used to be like a ship, and we when we wanted to construct our new restaurant, we used the building materials from that old restaurant. We used all the construction material to build up the new restaurant and also our fitness area. So we try to use everything that we before we dispose of anything, we first look if we can reuse or redo or recycle them. Such as you can see here, one of our welcome cards. These guests can take home with them. These welcome cards, we have a sweet lady in the towel hut, which cuts up any cardboard boxes which we get our food and beverage items from, and they glue a little note on them: our happy honeymoon, happy anniversary. We choose to stay green. Anything that where we know about the guests beforehand they arrive, we cut these cardboard boxes up and we put them at their entry of the door. And also a very beautiful gesture of ours is like towels at the beach towels when they are not to be used anymore. They have a little stain on them. Except of throwing these towels completely out, what we do is we cut that little stain out and we use that towel. We repurpose actually the towel into a gym towel or a fitness area towel. We also, instead of throwing out our uniforms for what we do, we let the same lady, she cuts up any old uniforms and they made that into that beautiful towel. I do not have with me at the moment, but in all our fitness area, we do have these towels. Also, not only waste management, but yet also the water management I want to talk about a little is all our laundry is in-house, and all the gray and wastewater we get out of the laundry, we repurpose that and use it for our irrigation, as our irrigation is 100% green water, or gray water, sorry. Next slide. So at Bukutian Tower, we try to limit the most possible our disposal of any goods that we use, soft goods and construction material goods, or any other goods, such as I've just explained, our fitness area. The fitness center is not only, the fitness center was built out of the old construction material from the old restaurant. Also, our floor, the deck of the fitness center is made out of recycled tires. The deck of our new restaurant is also made of wood and plastic resin, which has been recycled. The parking lot, when we wanted to build or repurpose the parking lot, we used the old surface from the old parking lot together with that gravel and that tar. We built the new parking lot. And one of my goals here is, because we have a beautiful brewery called Balashi Brewery here, which has two types of beer. It's called Balashi beer or chill beer. And these beer bottles can be recycled at the brewery. So when I am at the F&B area, I try to stress with my employees to do not throw away any Balashi bottles. Try to divert these in the containers which we have all over our resort. We have 4 containers where we can recycle divert plastic from any plastic that still enters our resort, from glass and cardboard. And I try to educate our associates, our employees, to please make sure that these beer bottles are also recycled. Next slide, Tamoy. As I said, we divert almost everything through reduce, reuse, and recycle. We monthly divert 65% of our waste by reusing and reducing. We repurpose soft goods. All furniture and electronics are diverted, and all recycling bins for glass and carton waste, keeping Aruba beautiful and the beaches clean. One of the key areas is food reduction. We've seen out of research that 30% of these food that people eat at our restaurants have been going to the garbage. So what we did, we reduced the portions by 30%, and all food that still comes back as waste, we donate.
Oh, it seems he may have gone disconnected. Hi, Janelle, is he back in as yet?
Not yet.
Seems I've gotten disconnected, and in the interest of time, Chris, should we wait a little, or should we just move on to the next presenter to avoid any delay and pick up back from where we?
Yeah, Dagmara is saying yes that his laptop died. Apparently she's also from the same hotel, so she asked that maybe we move on. How many more slides were there in the presentation, Samoy? Just out of curiosity.
Just a few more. It's not much more. I'm not sure if Dagmara would want to just jump in to finish up.
Yeah, I mean, it might be useful, and I noticed there that there are a couple of questions. So I mean, if we can run through, and then he got most of it, yeah. So maybe what we can do, let's just show the remaining of the few slides left, and then maybe Dagmara might also be able to respond to a couple of the questions in the chat. I won't pretend. Yeah, there are a number of very interesting questions that are coming up. So, all right. So I guess this is summarizing some of the key. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I found it very interesting that, very impressive that the resort was able to, at a high level, utilize the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. In some cases, it seemed upcycle as well. And I found it very interesting, and the number of certifications that they have, and the fact that they made every effort to ensure that they had almost zero waste, reducing the environmental footprint of the resort, as well as educating guests who though knowing that they're coming to an eco resort, still had the mentality of using bottled water, and then having to educate them about the importance of reducing their footprint as it relates to single-use plastics, for example. So yes, in summary, the waste management best practices would to start small, which is very important. Sustainability must be all encompassing. So as much as possible, we try to incorporate as much practices that will be sustainable. Um, um, Going after certifications are key because that, of course, they have to put in a lot of work. We were speaking earlier about the Green Globe certification and how difficult it is to attain, but they have to put in the work to get that certification. Mindful practices, and I mentioned before, education and consistent internal audits, which is important for them to ensure they're on track with their goals with regards to the resort and how they wish to have the resort be presented. Um, Questions is Dagmar?
I think Jareth came back, you know.
Okay, great.
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. Jareth,
Yes,
I was
yes,
I was
yeah.
stepping for you for a little, but you can just wrap up. Right? This is your last slide, I think.
Yeah, very sorry. I am
No
back.
problem. It's just how these things
Problem.
sometimes.
All right. I see I have a question. Whatever happened with the waste away system in Aruba?
Yes, and there's an earlier question, Jareth, an interesting one about the importance of sustainability and the actual profits and bottom line of your hotel, and wondering, without sharing all of the secrets, what were some of the considerations from a financial standpoint in terms of all your sustainability efforts too. That was the second question that was quite interesting.
All right, yes. Certainly, you have to take in the bottom line into consideration. But as our CEO always tells me, we are not in the hotel industry; we are in the nature industry. So any investment which is ongoing is not a problem for him, and it makes us reach our bottom line. In comparison with the other hotels on Aruba, we have been since April. We have been at 90% occupancy, and that is due to the fact that we are sustainable. People see that nowadays. It is more attractive to go to a sustainable hotel for a guilt-free vacation, as we are net zero and carbon neutral. And right now, we have just started with a brand new service. It's called Carbon Offset Concierge, and this is in light of any flight shaming that has been going on in Europe. So if a guest is doubting and coming to Aruba because doesn't want to admit any carbon emissions to the atmosphere because he's flying, I can help in that or attend those worries and inquiry. I can talk to him, and maybe like in KLM version, they can buy carbon offsets. Also, American Airlines also has carbon offset options. So if you're flying to Aruba, um, in comparison with staying at home, if you're coming to a carbon neutral hotel and offsetting, then you'll be better sustainable than staying at home. That was a beautiful research we did last.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Jack. There was
Thanks.
a question, right, Janelle?
An additional question. How do you deal with difficult guests or those that may be non-compliant? Also, do you engage the guests in your sustainable initiatives?
Oh yes, like I see right now, Gil Henry says, I visited the resort some years ago and got a full tour. I give sustainability tours, and every morning at breakfast, I engage with the guests. I ask them if they have any tips or if they see that we have missed out something or sustainable practices that we could add. And the beautiful thing is, most guests, they always give us a high score for sustainability because they see it all around them. When you reach our resort, you will see sustainability is all encompassing in our resort. One of the beautiful examples of this is our our policy, so our mission and vision statement is our environmental policy also at the same time. So we built up from out our sustainable practices.
Ah, that's great. Any other questions, Janelle?
Yes. You
I
want
see a question. Yeah. I see a question about the repurposed gym towels.
the repurposed gym towels, right?
Okay, the response. Well, the funny thing is they are repurposed gym towels, they're repurposed beach towels, and repurposed uniforms. But the funny thing is the guests don't even know this. When I talk to guests and I give my sustainability tours and I pass by the fitness area and I show them the towel, they're like, "Oh, these were repurposed. These are not new bought towels." They don't even realize that until I point that out. These are being used by the guests in the gym, of course.
That's funny. Is that any more questions or that's it?
That's it.
Okay, thanks so much, Jareth. A very, very interesting presentation. I did make some comments when you had lost connection. So I thank you so much for being a part of this, and we look forward to hearing more. And I'd love to visit the resort one day. I'm sure many people would want to after your
You are
presentation.
welcome, Tomoy.
Okay, all right. So now we are going to move on to our next presenter. And this presenter is Mr. Alejandro Medina, and he's a consultant at the Universidad de los Andes School of Management in Colombia. Mr. Medina is a circular economy consultant. So he's an integrated water management and circular economy consultant with experience in the execution of statewide programs aiming at the formulation of initiatives for business water stewardship. Additionally, co-author of the online MOOC in Coursera entitled Circular Economy Tools, and a consultant on UNIDO's Eco-Industrial Park program in Colombia. His presentation will focus on the circular economy and integrated waste water resource management in the Bogota River Basin. And so it's a little different from the previous presentations. And so, Alejandro, I invite you to take the floor.
Well, Tomoy, thank you very much for inviting me here, and hello to everyone. Hope you're enjoying this webinar, and I see we're running a little bit out of time, so I will make it simple, short, but still interesting. So, yeah, just to clarify, I'm an integrated water management consultant, but I don't want you to worry about this because the model I will explain to you and our experience, I think it's very insightful for what can be applied to any kind of resource, right? In this case, we did it with water, but we also have experiences doing it with other materials. So I'll get into this, and you will see how this systemic approach has helped us. And I saw a very interesting, good question. Show businesses there's a business case here for the application of sustainable practices. So just to give you a little context, yes, as Tomoy presented it to us in the beginning, Colombia is part of this extended Caribbean region, and the Bogota River Basin is in the middle, in the inland part, in the center of Colombia, and it's the home to very unique kind of ecosystems. I'm pretty sure you're not used to see this in Jamaica or any other island in the Caribbean, but you see this map. This is the Bogota River Basin, and there are some blue areas that are shaded here. These are Páramo. It's also known as the Andean moorland, right? And it's defined as the place where there is horizontal rain, not vertical rain, but there's horizontal rain. And all these trees you see there, like in this picture in the bottom, they look like bushes. They are actually sponges, and they are the start of this water cycle that in the end comes to us user very clean, and we are and we have a reliable source of water. So in this map, you see all companies that participated in this project, and I will go into details of this water management program we developed with Universidad de los Andes. So next slide, please. Our model is called Redes. So it means a sustainable enterprises network. And we have three, our model is divided in three strategies. First, we have a change strategy, and it's the first basis of our program. We want to show businesses there's a strategy for change, but there's a business case in this. The second base of our model is learning by doing. We do this kind of consulting, research, and teaching approach, right? Where we apply and teach different tools that companies and businesses can apply to their contexts, but they are the ones that do it. So it's different from just consulting, in which we have seen that many consulting practices, what they achieve is more or less 30% of the implementation of the projects they guide companies to do, right? In our case, with this learning by doing approach, we empower companies and their staff to design and learn how to use these tools. And what we have seen is that the implementation rates of the projects they design and we help them and we guide them in the formulation, it's around 70%. So it's almost double it's more than double the rate of implementation when you do consulting practices. And the last pillar of this methodology is network collaboration. This is very important. We do these programs where more or less 20 companies decide to voluntarily participate and free of charge. I will get into this later. And they start participating in these skill building programs with other companies, maybe their competition as well, but also companies they were not aware that they were surrounded by, right? But also other different kind of companies. So these three gauges, what it does, it creates an enabling environment for companies to go forward, to change, to transform their industrial processes, and also become more circular. So this is all. Can you hit next slide, please? And next slide, please. This is all, the one back, please. This is all part, can you go to the, thank you. This is all in alliance with us, the academia. That's why we do it from the university. And it's important that it's the School of Management. I want to emphasize on this because we're not doing this from the environmental engineering or sustainability research area. We're doing this from the School of Management as part of a business case to really promote companies to participate and take a different role in the application of sustainability. And we do this with help with the private sector and the public sector. So the public sector also becomes a stakeholder that enables the different initiatives can be actually implemented. So they can do this by innovating norms, by facilitating these programs. Most of the times, chambers of commerce and environmental authorities are the ones that finance this kind of projects. So that's why they invite private companies to participate in this program free of charge. And it's kind of changing their perspective, right? And how companies perceive them, not as like a police, an environmental police, right? That's one of their jobs, of course, to make sure that there's compliance in all norms, but also this provides an opportunity for environmental authorities to be seen as enablers, as activators of sustainability. So very briefly, the results, next slide, please. The results we obtained with this integrated water management program in the Bogota River Basin was the participation of 22 companies. 22 companies who were large, medium, small, even micro companies from different economic activities. So there was food and beverage, there was pharmaceuticals, there was manufacturing, there was also agriculture. And what we did was support them into formulating collaborative initiatives. That's why it's bold, collaborative. When you talk about water, and this we can start seeing the similarities we can do with plastic and all these wastes, right? Collaborative initiatives make that the scope of projects is larger, but also it starts involving different stakeholders in their supply chains or their territory. And our focus here was developing this business and regional water security. We created these integrated water management capacities, and in doing so, what we were teaching them and what we were trying to achieve was how can we make sure there are new corporate sustainability strategies as part of this managerial and executive management, right? How to make sustainability part of these corporate strategies. And finally, in the end, this is what it does. The participation of multiple stakeholders, what it does is it improves governance, water governance in this case, right? We have the public sector, we have the private sector, and also other stakeholders became involved, as I will show you in the kind of projects, the projects they developed. So civil society also got involved in these projects. So these were the benefits in the end of the projects they designed. So we divide them in economic and environmental benefits. And I saw here a very good and interesting question. Let me just look for it, from Dr. Andrea Clayton, asking how these practices, how can we show that these practices actually have impacts in profits, right? So the first indicator we do, we want to calculate when we do this kind of projects are the economic benefits. So in this case, the 10 companies calculated that the avoided costs, the costs that they would avoid in extreme climatic events would be nearly to $350,000. Notice I'm not saying per year, I'm saying this per extreme climate event. And then I want to tell you that these were only calculated by these 10 companies, right? Of course, when you do projects in the ecosystems around you, you're not the only one who's going to be benefit from this kind of activity, right? So this was only the calculation of 10 companies in one of the most industrial areas in Colombia. If we had the chance to estimate and make the other 200 companies that are in this area, this number would probably be 10 times bigger, right? And the payback period would be much smaller, but this payback period of 10 years takes into account, this is the time, and this is what it's needed from the ecosystems to mature, to grow up and be resilient, right? It's like planting a tree. When you do this when you plant a tree, you cannot expect a small tree to be as effective as a 20-year-old tree, right? And also we calculated environmental benefits of the water regulated in the watershed. This was about 500,000 meters cubed per year. So this is approximately the consumption of 11,000 families. This improved water quality by avoiding the erosion of different ecosystems and mountains. So a lot of suspended solids were retained from water bodies, equivalent to almost 7,000 tons a year. That's the amount of waste, if we wanted to see it this way, of about 20,000 people. 65 hectares of areas of ecosystems were restored. That's about 90 football fields. And planting trees, of course, has captures CO2 emissions. So this is about taking out of circulation about 1,300 cars. So can you go to the next slide, please? The kind of projects they developed were divided into 3 kind of projects. One that were basically business initiatives. So from this program, they understood there was a business case in protecting water sources, because if they don't have any supply of water, right, there's a cost of opportunity basically from limiting their production or spending a lot of money in getting different and alternate water sources, right? So these were business-led initiatives. Then there was civil society, natural reserves kinds of projects where companies decided to articulate with civil society organizations and protect areas they were managing. And also, very important, businesses found that also the environmental authority was leading wetland conservation programs. So knowing that there was a business case in protecting wetlands that were a very important source for aquifer recharge, and also flood control, they decided to invest in these programs, right? So can you go to the next slide? In conclusion, the lessons we learned was basically businesses understand that water is not only managed within their facilities. They can be very, very robust, right? They have a lot of technologies, but really water management starts in the territory. So it goes beyond their fences. And also, this made them understand there's a multi-sectorial business approach to water management. Sometimes companies only focus on their same economic activities and do this kind of projects. And also by doing this kind of projects, they understand there are new opportunities, and we do this by showing them there are new circular business models like circular supply, resource recovery, product life extension, product as services, and shared models. I'm not going to go into detail of these models, but they understand there are different opportunities, and those opportunities are innovations, new incomes, new revenue streams. They can take the opportunity to actually benefit from them. And also, the last very important point is this makes state programs investment more efficient. Environmental authorities' investment in water security probably was not as good as when they were able to engage companies to also support this, because there's a business case to this. So it was a very interesting experience, and it was by the time Colombia launched its national circular economy strategy. So these kind of initiatives also have served as a showcase, as successful stories to promote and set in motion this circular economy strategy. We have multiplied and escalated this model. So just to finish, in Mexico, and so next slide, please. And we helped the environmental authority and also about 40 companies in establishing this circular economy system in the state of Querétaro. 17 projects were regarding water, but also, that's why I wanted to wait to hear, we also do this with closed loop material cycles, so working with their supply chain, all along stakeholders in the supply chain, to reduce the amount of waste and plastic, and make this an opportunity to recycle, reuse, or remanufacture different materials in their supply chain or other supply chains. So I leave the links here in the slides. I know there's a very short amount of time left, so that was my presentation. Hope you have some questions, and that this is an interesting and systemic model that you can see you can inspire from to really tackle waste production in the Caribbean.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Just to say before we move on to the questions, when I was asked to put together this webinar, I was asked to select specific projects that we want to showcase first, because this is going to be a part of a series, and I found yours to be particularly interesting, especially because it wasn't entirely focused on solid waste. It was focused primarily on water management, and the fact that you're able to get the companies involved and then multiply this program in other countries is even more interesting, because then it's great when you can start some, in your country, but when you can actually extend it to other parts of the world, other parts of the continent, it's great, because then of course that we'll just continue with the successes that come out of these kind of initiatives. So thank you so much for your presentation. It's very interesting. I think we have a question, Janelle.
Yes. Mr. Corbin asked, given the different expectations of various sectors, the private sector, civil society, governments, and academia, were there any strategies used to bring them all together with a common goal?
Definitely, this is very important, and our work also starts first with environmental authorities. So there has to be a common vision about how to tackle and promote sustainability. And this is where we have developed this model, working hand in hand with the private sectors, right? With companies developing these projects as I just showed you, but also at the same time, we work with environmental authorities to design their own mechanisms. So mechanisms that help innovate norms, right? Sometimes norms can be the first barrier to promote even waste reuse or water reuse or any kind of things you can imagine. Uh, Also incentives, like how can they work to make available some incentives that help companies actually find the first point to overcome this barrier to say sustainability. Also creating cooperation or designing some cultural things for mainstreaming circular economy. So yeah, the strategy is work together with the private sector and the public sector. This is a systemic thing. So that's why the academia serves as the link, right, between those two. And I showed you this triangle at the first slide. We work in this kind of alliance, and we kind of make this happen from the academia.
Thank you. Mr. Guy is asking, how did you convince the first cohort of businesses to come on board?
This is a very important question, and this was the first pilot we did in Colombia in the Bogota River Basin, and the companies have already participated in other programs that we developed before with closed loop material cycles and energy. And you have to start with the best of the class, right? You have to set some examples, and you have to convince and make these companies participate so that they lead the way afterwards. So if you see here, maybe if you can go back to the second slide, we had companies like Coca-Cola participating. We also had a very huge company from the food and beverage with dairy products. So maybe they're not familiar to you, but these big name companies help convincing other companies to participate. There's no better way to promote this kind of programs than the example set by other companies. So yeah, that's the first thing you have to do. And most of the times, these kind of businesses are already in the same page with you with this mindset on circular economy, sustainability, and also they know this is beneficial for their businesses.
Alejandro, you mentioned the second slide. You wanted me to go back to the second
So
slide?
yeah, it's here. You see the image has the logos of the companies. Yeah, it's
Right.
okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Are there any more questions?
No further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Alejandro, for a very interesting presentation, and look forward to more great work on your project. And now we're going to, and of course, we'll be in touch for sure with any updates that you may have to share with us. All right. So we're going to move on to our next presenter. As I mentioned earlier, it's a bonus presentation. I know we're running a bit behind time. However, it's going to be a very interesting presentation. So if you can stay and listen, I would really appreciate. So we have Mr. Robert Glazer, who is a research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and he's also the executive director of the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute. And Mr. Glazer, at the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, he serves as the Climate Change Research and Monitoring Work Group Leader. He is the past chair of the Monroe County Climate Change Advisory Committee, and a committee that is tasked with making recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on adaptation options. He has served as co-PI on numerous marine and terrestrial climate change adaptation projects throughout Florida. And he'll be presenting towards the reduction of abandoned, lost, or discarded fishing gear in the Caribbean. So, Bob, I hand over to you, and I apologize for the delay, but you can start your presentation.
Thank you, Tamoy. I hadn't realized that I was a bonus presenter.
Well, you're not part of the compendium. That's why you're bonus.
Okay. So actually, when I was asked to present here, it was on a project that we're doing with the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute related to addressing abandoned, lost, and discarded fishing gear, which, as we all know, is a big problem. When we look at the beaches, we see not only discarded drinking and food plasticware, but we also see a lot of associated gear that has been discarded, and it has become a very large issue as articulated in this slide. And this sort of points to the problem that we have. Up to a million tons of fishing gear is lost annually. Up to 70% of the large plastic pollution is ghost gear, and that can continue to fish. So it not only is impacting the area where the gear has been discarded, but it's also cascading down and impacting additional resources and removing that the commercial value from society. So it continues to be a very important consideration. And finally, it also poses a hazard to navigation. So fishing gear remains a very impactful issue in the marine environment. I'm going to talk about a project that we have developed and that we're starting to work on right now, but it's multidimensional. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk first about our partners. GCFI, along with the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, UNEP in Kingston, are co-hosts of the Caribbean node of the Global Partnership on Marine Litter. That's that logo on the top there. And there are a number of different nodes throughout the world. We're co-hosts of the Caribbean node, and the Caribbean node is doing a large number of activities, some of which are related to this particular issue, that of ALDFG, but also are related to a lot of other things, such as harmonizing methods of collecting, identifying best scientific approaches for dealing with it, looking at the impacts of marine litter, and funding activities that support those outcomes. So as you see, we have this partnership and the Global Partnership for Marine Litter. But in this particular project, we've also enlisted our partners with the Ocean Conservancy, which is the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. And their particular mission is focused solely on ghost gear. These people have sort of written the book literally on best practices related to dealing with ghost gear and how to reduce it in the environment. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to briefly point out 3 initiatives GCFI is doing, and they all come together under this project. But the first one is, which I just spoke about, is the Global Partnership on Marine Litter, the Caribbean node. But the second one is our MPA Connect initiative, which is actually a very large marine protected area initiative throughout the Caribbean, which encompasses approximately 25 different marine protected areas. And it's a network of like-minded individuals and organizations that it is designed to increase their capacity towards accomplishing their missions. It does a number of different activities it focuses on, including sustainable financing, fisheries, a number of different priorities. And then we have this other one called Fisheries for Fishers, and that is where we try to bring the artisanal fishers in the region into the discussion, let them help control and identify what the issues are, and to develop solutions for those issues. Now, each one of those initiatives I've sort of illustrated it here, that they're sort of in their own silos, but they're really not. And next slide, please. Because they sort of all come together in this particular project that we're doing related to abandoned, lost, and discarded fishing gear. And what we're trying to do is what we are doing is, with a little bit of funding, we're bringing all of these initiatives together in the sense that we're using our connections in the MPA network and with our artisanal fishers to sort of bring this approach to dealing with marine litter into focus. So we've got a number of these different initiatives that are all sort of overlapping. but are providing a synergistic kind of approach to addressing marine litter. We have the marine protected area managers, we have the fishers, and then it's all brought together within the Global Partnership on Marine Litter. Next slide, please. So what the Fisheries for Fishers initiative actually recognizes fishers in the region who have developed an ethic that is based on conservation and have shown that they sort of have this ethic that has been developed over years of working in the fishing industry. This is an award being presented at our annual meeting. We have a meeting where we bring together about 400 people each year, and those people are scientists, educators, students, and we do emphasize bringing fishers to the meeting. Next slide, please. This is just a group of the fishers that we've brought to the meeting. They're from throughout the region. And these people represent the best of the best. They are the conservationists. They recognize that long-term conservation is dependent upon an ethic that recognizes that resources need to be conserved and available for future generations. They are from approximately 20 different countries. And we sort of enlist them not only in this activity, but all kinds of activities, and we call them fisher ambassadors, so that they can actually go out into their communities and sort of pass along the ethic that they have developed themselves. And it's become quite a prestigious award. So we enlist these Fisheries for Fishers winners into developing different programs, and in their meetings at GCFI, they develop what they want their programs to be focusing on for the next year. Independent of anything that we have done last year or the year that we last had everybody come together, their particular interest and focus was on marine litter. That was independent of any input from us. So they recognize the issue, and they recognize that they want to be part of the solution. So it represents sort of a low-hanging fruit in the sense that here are the primary stakeholders in addressing a lot of the lost gear and abandoned gear, and they are willing and interested in doing something about it. Next slide, please. So in leading up to this project, we actually have funded a couple of fishers to go to Panama to participate in a workshop where they get trained by, again, our partner, the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, on best practices for removing ghost gear and associated debris from the environment, as well as having classroom learning. Next slide, please. So the activities that we are working on in this particular project, which was funded by Fisheries and Oceans Canada, are first of all identifying where the hotspots are of marine litter. We are developing a plan for the Caribbean-focused best practices, meaning that we are adapting some of the best practices developed in other parts of the world to the realities of Caribbean life. And as we all know, the Caribbean is a little bit different than, say, Northern Europe or other places. So the fishers are actually actively participating in developing those best practices because in reality, anything that we do needs to be, they need to have buy-in, and they also need to have, to be able to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. We need to make it friendly for them. We are enlisting these people as fisher ambassadors, as I mentioned, to go around and sort of enlighten other fishers in terms of the advantages of long-term sustainability. And also they are enlisting they themselves are enlisting other stakeholders, for example, other people in the supply chain that, like restaurants that are on the beaches, and to be part of this whole effort. They're also involved in both receiving training and delivering training. And then, of course, we have the in-water activities, which I just highlighted related to that workshop in Panama. So we want to have them trained sufficiently so that they can retrieve a lot of this fishing gear both effectively and safely. Next slide, please. So I guess that's my last slide there. I wanted to do this quickly. I just wanted to point out that we have this one initiative, and it's really uh, focused heavily. This one particular initiative is focused heavily on marine litter as it relates to fishing gear, and we're going to be meeting in a month with our fishers and sort of jump-starting this whole initiative. And I know we've gone over here, so I'm not sure if there's time for questions, but if there is, I would more than be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Bob. Janelle, are there any questions for Bob?
Yes, they are.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Miss Clayton, she notes the importance of considering that some of the marine litter is generated by tour and boat operations that service the tourism sector. How is the sector being engaged to support sensitization and awareness?
So that's a great question, and that actually goes into where I was talking about the different initiatives of GCFI. And we're engaging our MPA partners in a lot of this. The MPAs, marine protected areas, as we all know, are sort of areas of nexus where tourism sort of, where what the people use for recreation. And by engaging them and having them be part of the solution, first of all, they have to be made aware of what the issues are, and nobody's more aware in general than those people who are on the ground and have to sort of navigate the difficulties of marine litter. But these people have very, they're very interested. It sort of crosses across our initiatives, and especially in terms of the GPML as well as the MPA Connect. And it is becoming one of the larger areas of capacity building that we're focusing on within the GPML.
Thank you. Do you get the sense that the issue of ADLFG is on the radar of Caribbean governments or ministries in general as an issue to be addressed? Any ideas on how we can raise awareness on this?
Well, somebody previously pointed out the importance of governance in their slide. I think that the issue of ALDFG is probably not, it's not something that people immediately focus on when they're walking down the beach. They don't really think, oh, well, this is from the fishing sector or this is from the tourism sector or whatever. I think they just see litter and they think, well, if we can get rid of plastic bottles, we've sort of solved a lot of it. But as I showed in the first slide, it's a huge issue and a significant percentage of marine litter that does wind up, either on the shores or underwater. So my impression is that there is a lot higher bar that we need to achieve to make this a higher visibility at some of those policy-making levels than, say, for example, what we've been talking about a lot today, which is plastic bags or plastic bottles. I think that the fishing aspects are sort of, a lot of it's happening underwater, so it's what's out of sight is almost out of mind. But it's up to us to ensure that this issue does get elevated to those higher policy making levels.
Thank you. There are no further questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Bob, for your interesting presentation. And it's great that the work that's being done to bring together fishers to train them on this type of initiative. And hopefully you'll be able to extend to more fishers in the future. I would like to thank everyone for attending our webinar today. I know we went a little bit over schedule, but I hope the information shared was useful, and we implore you to share what you learned today. And if you can adopt any other best practices within your organizations and in your recommendations where you can see fit in your areas of work. As mentioned earlier, the compendium document is currently being reviewed by a graphic artist for further update, and we'll share this widely once it is finalized. And if you have any questions from the previous presentations, I implore you to just send these questions to us. Janelle can put my email address in the chat. It's tamoy.singh@un.org. And you can send those questions to us, and I will pass them on to the presenters, and they will provide a response to you as soon as possible. And once again, thank you all for being here, and do enjoy the rest of your day.